Hello everyone, good afternoon. I hope all your friends and families are well. Welcome to our second feature IM Masterclass titled 6 Weeks in Isolation, What Have We Learned So Far? For the next hour, we're going to discuss the trends and insights we've seen since the UK went into lockdown, as well as some of our top digital marketing tips looking ahead. But first, a few notes on housekeeping. We're recording this webinar and the link to the on-demand version will be shared in tomorrow's follow-up email, along with a copy of the deck. Everyone's going to be muted throughout the duration of this webinar. However, we still want you to ask questions using the Q&A functionality. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll see a button labeled Q&A. Once you click this, you'll be able to write out your questions and we'll either answer them live or one of the team will write your response afterwards. On top of the Q&A, chat is also enabled. This can be accessed at the bottom of your Zoom window again. Please do feel free to use this throughout. You can send individual messages or group messages. If you can't hear us or something isn't working, please do let us know. If you have joined us for any of the other webinars, you're probably familiar with the Zoom poll feature. Throughout the webinar, we're going to be running a number of polls. You'll have about 15 to 20 seconds to submit your answer, and then I'll share the results with you live. To show you what these will look like and to test that they're working, I've just started one. So if you can see that poll window, please press yes and let me know that you can. That will be really helpful. Amazing. All right, that's perfect. That looks like everyone can see it. Brilliant. I'm going to end that now. Cool. So now that's done, it's probably time I introduce myself and the team that are co-hosting this. Lots of people today. My name's George Hunt and I'm joined by Becky, Alex, Lucy, Kayla and Callum. And alongside them, we're fortunate enough to be joined by some awesome guests today. Zoe Williams, digital editor of gathered.com, Vicky Bruce, director of e-commerce at Immediate, and Rob Marshall, media relations manager at Canute. For the final 15 minutes of today's session, I'm going to be hosting a live panel with our guests. So do let me know any questions that you might have. Remember, hit that Q&A button at the bottom and I'll try and get through them all at the end. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with Immediate Media. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this slide. However, for those of you that aren't as familiar, I just wanted to cover off a few things. We're the UK's special interest content and platform company, and we have a vast array of brands, some of which you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, and publish both print and digital content. Last week, we published some truly mind-blowing stats, and I want to quickly run you through these because in our last IM Masterclass 6 weeks ago, we reported that we engaged around 40 million unique users across our sites each month, but things have changed. In April, we reached an unprecedented and unrivaled 87 million users across our digital portfolio, an increase of 80% year on year, with page views showing a 100% increase year on year at 322 million. We saw record-breaking traffic across many of our sites, including BBC Good Food, History Extra, Gardener's World, Science Focus, Bike Radar, BBC Wildlife, the list goes on. And we truly showcase great examples of innovation and creativity across the portfolio. So as you can imagine, we've been really busy and we have been creating hundreds of pieces of content, launching new video series, podcasts, creating branded content and so on. And so you must be wondering why we're running these webinars. Well, it's become really clear that now more than ever, we need to get together to get through this incredibly difficult time. With all those users and increased digital activity, we have a vast amount of insight and data, and we feel it is our responsibility to help all of our stakeholders get through this time. That's why each week we're running a completely free webinar as part of our IM Masterclass series and are offering our support and advice to enable you not just to survive, but to thrive. So that was the introduction into the who, what and why. And for the rest of the session, we'll be reviewing the trends in consumer behavior we've seen so far during the COVID-19 crisis, both across the industry and internally at Immediate Media, and offer some recommendations on how best to leverage these insights to connect with your customers in the most effective way possible. We'll be breaking this down into 3 core segments: organic, paid, and e-commerce. And I'm now going to hand over to Becky, who's going to kick things off by delving into organic activity.
Thanks, George. I'm Becky and I'm the business manager for social, native and video here at Immediate. So we're 6 weeks into lockdown now and things have undoubtedly changed significantly in the last 6 weeks. One thing, however, remains consistent for all marketers, and that is the question, how can I connect with my customers during a crisis? So as I'm sure you can imagine, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. one thing that is certain though is that brands who are most adaptive during this period are the ones that are most likely to succeed. And in order to adapt, it's imperative to be clear not only of who you are as a brand, but also how your consumers are behaving and what they want to consume. So what do people want to consume? Well, at the start of lockdown, coronavirus was obviously at the forefront of people's minds. Google reported record levels of interest in the term, and news outlets saw huge surges in traffic as a result. But since then, interest in COVID appears to have peaked, and news outlets are seeing a decline in traffic, dropping 31.45% in the past week alone. So while news outlets are seeing a steady decline, publishers like Immediate are seeing consistent weekly growth in both web and social traffic. George mentioned just now that we reached 87 million users across our digital portfolio in April, an increase of 80% year on year. Looking more specifically over the last 6 weeks versus the 6 weeks prior, web traffic is up 44%. A recent Kantar study reported that social media engagement has increased by 61% over normal usage rates. Facebook, for example, has seen a 70% increase in usage across all of its apps, whilst Twitter is seeing 23% more daily users than a year ago. At Immediate, we've seen trends reflective of the wider industry. On average, our organic Facebook page views are up 45% since lockdown versus the 6 weeks prior. Reach is up 23%, and likes and followers are up 15%. When we ran our first webinar 6 weeks ago, we discussed the importance of being reactive with content and marketing strategies. Many brands took this in their stride, and we've seen an abundance of mindfulness-focused content popping up across the web, helping to ease anxieties. However, as people have become accustomed to the new normal, anxieties are slowly fading, and consumers are instead seeking out new ways to keep themselves occupied at home, as well as slowly starting to think about life beyond lockdown. Brands who have continually adapted their strategies in response to these ever-changing consumer behaviours have seen huge levels of success.
A great example of a brand that has shifted their marketing strategy is DoubleTree, an American hotel chain owned by Hilton. Famous for their chocolate chip cookies they serve at check-in, DoubleTree had kept the much-loved recipe a corporate secret. With its regular guests stuck at home, DoubleTree decided to reveal its highly sought-after recipe. A video containing the recipe has been viewed nearly 250,000 times. Fans have been quick to replicate the recipe and post their home-baked cookies on social media. The hashtag DoubleTree cookie has been used over 10,000 times to date. This is such a great example of a brand who has gone beyond reactive and really thought about what their consumers want and how they can offer value, even if it's not directly driving conversion. Investing in a loyal customer base in this period is a massively worthwhile endeavor. This is something that we have taken on board here at Immediate, with editorial teams being as reactive as possible to consumer demands. Traditionally known for keeping the nation up to date with all the latest in TV and radio, Radio Times has stepped it up a gear over the past 6 weeks, providing more in the way of entertainment inspiration. I'm sure that a large majority of you have partaken in some sort of quiz or 10 during isolation, so it's perhaps no surprise that when Radio Times introduced the Pub Quiz Questions content series, it became some of the highest viewed content on site, amassing over 1.6 million page views in just 6 weeks and a dwell time of 484% up on site average. This is a prime example of how adapting strategy to meet consumer demands can drive significant engagement. Audiences are clearly flocking to trusted sources for entertainment and inspiration, for things to keep themselves occupied, and are willing to spend more time consuming this content than ever before.
As you'd expect, it's not just websites that are seeing increased content consumption. The same is also happening across social, and platforms have too had to innovate and adapt in response. One of the key ways that they have done this is through releasing new formats. Facebook have reported a significant rise in users watching live video streams and have changed product roadmaps as a result. Instagram have launched a way to browse feeds with friends. Pinterest has introduced Stay Home, Stay Safe, Stay Inspired board, as well as the Pinterest shop, where people can buy products from small businesses who are struggling during this period. TikTok has seen unprecedented growth since the pandemic, particularly amongst Gen Z. and is now the world's most downloaded app. In response, they have updated their safety controls, introducing tighter restrictions and better content filters. With the platforms adapting their strategies, the same has also happened with brand activity on the apps. A large number of marketers are using this period to experiment with the various formats available, which has led to some great success stories. Off the back of the rise in live video, here at IM, we have launched a cross-brand weekly live video series, Stay Home, Get Inspired, where different editors from our brands run through ideas for you at home. On top of this, a few of our brands have invested heavily into video content. BBC Good Food, for example, has launched 7 new video series since lockdown that range from cooking for one to ingredient challenges, all of which have proved hugely popular.
But it's not just video formats seeing increased engagements. Interactive formats such as stories, polls, and Q&As have been equally well met. Estee Lauder is a great example of a brand leveraging engaging story formats to their advantage. Tapping into the recent trend of fill in the blanks, Estee Lauder posted a story to their followers, asking them to fill in their favorite products. Audiences then complete the form and repost this to their own story, creating an opportunity for the brand to be seen by thousands of new people who are likely to have similar interests to their target audience. With limited resources currently available to create an abundance of content, we have seen an increase of brands encouraging user-generated content over the past 6 weeks. And with audiences currently home with more time on their hands, they are more than willing to oblige. Dr. Oetker recently launched their #BakeARainbow campaign, encouraging audiences to bake rainbow-inspired treats in support of the NHS. The hashtag has so far driven over 200 pieces of user-generated content, which then becomes free content for the brand to use in their marketing.
As a society, we have moved from a phase of anxiety to a phase of acceptance and normality. But with virus transmission starting to slow and talk of isolation rules being relaxed, we're starting to allow ourselves to get excited about life post-lockdown and planning for the future. This is reflected in the recent rise in traffic across the travel industry. For example, according to SimilarWeb, week-on-week traffic is up 7.3% for searches for hotels and accommodation. So what exactly does this mean for marketers? Well, from past crises, we've seen that those who are willing to adapt are most likely to succeed. With this, now would be a good time to reflect on the situation and adapt strategies once again, focusing on ways to engage consumers as they begin to plan for the future. Secret Escapes are a great example of a brand who has adapted very quickly to the changing situation and have recently launched their new weekly email, Postcards from Our Travels. Aware that they need to keep their recipients engaged through this period where travel is off the cards, they seek to inspire them to read and learn about destinations to add to their wish list. Lastminute.com have taken a similar approach, aware that readers have a lot more time on their hands and now more than ever are thinking about where they'll travel to once this is all passed. Lastminute.com have shifted to providing more nurturing and informational content, inspiring readers and encouraging them to add destinations to their bucket list.
So to summarize, here are a few key takeaways from what we have discussed so far. Number 1, adapt. While these unprecedented times are entirely unpredictable, there is one thing that remains certain: things will continue to change. In order to succeed through this period, it's crucial for brands to continually adapt to reflect these changes. Listen to your consumers, keep an eye on your competitors, read up on industry trends as well as the general news. Take time to reflect, review your strategy in line with insights gained, and then adapt accordingly. Number 2, experiment. With the continued changes, new trends are emerging daily, and what works one week might not work the next. Don't rest on your laurels. Use this time to leverage the wide range of platforms and functionalities that are continually being made available, testing and learning as you go. And 3, plan for the future. Consumers are slowly starting to shift their mindsets to focus on a world post-isolation. While this reactivity is key, marketers should also use this period of change to plan for the future, proactively curating strategies for a post-COVID world.
Awesome. So having looked at some general trends from both the industry and here at Immediate, we thought it'd be really good to hone in on one of our digital publications and have a look at how user behavior has changed and how strategies have shifted in response to this. So I'm really delighted today to be joined by the very lovely Zoe Williams, who is our digital editor for Gathered. Thank you so much for joining us, Zoe.
Thanks for having me.
So for those on the webinar who aren't familiar, could you give us a very top-line overview of Gathered?
Yes, so Gathered is a relatively new website. We launched just the week before Christmas in 2019, so we've been live for about 4 or 5 months. We are Immediate's new flagship website for crafters. We were born out of realizing that there is an audience of 112 million English-speaking crafters around the world. And until now, our digital strategy hadn't really fully focused on their needs. And also most of those people are multi-craft. So we went from lots of small individual sites to one big hub site that offers tutorials, patterns, inspiration, and is very much focused on the things that those people are looking for online.
Cool. So as a relatively new publication, I guess at the start of this year, you had some probably fixed plans in place, which I imagine have been completely thrown out of the water. So could you possibly tell us a bit more about what you've been doing on the site since the crisis began, any major shifts in strategy and types of content you've been putting out?
Yeah, of course. So ironically, we had a big roadmap for Gathered that was on a whiteboard in our office, which we're now all locked out of. And that's probably quite apt for what's happened, because we had a really clear idea of what we wanted to do in Q1 and Q2 this year. We wanted to have really build our free patterns sections. We wanted to launch into doing more video content, building affiliate revenue, and sort of relook at what we were currently offering people in terms of tutorials at a top level. And then coronavirus hit, and our team was actually hit quite early, literally by coronavirus, when one of them was sent home. So we were sort of instantly quarantined and sent out of the office, and we've been working as a remote team ever since. And we quickly noticed that there was a huge rise in online interest in craft. So you can see on the slide here, 9%, one Kantar study showed that 9% of all social chat included mention of craft terms. And we suddenly saw people selling out of beginner knitting kits. We suddenly saw a huge jump in Google search for things like how to knit a blanket. Our free cross-stitch patterns suddenly took off. So we thought, okay, we're going to adapt quite quickly. And we basically deprioritized everything for the first week, and we pivoted our content strategy to launching new content that met the queries people were looking for. So easy crafts they could do from home, how to start a new craft, and we've focused in on those areas, and it's doing quite well as a result. Yeah, we also did daily patterns, daily free patterns for people, because we recognize that it's partly about the uplifting element of lockdown for people. So it's really nice for them to be able to come and see what the new thing is they can make. After we did that, we looked at some of the specific trends. For example, there's been a massive rise in rainbow crafts. So we now have 15 different craft rainbow patterns and a free crochet rainbow pattern, and we sort of followed that interest. And we also really tightened up on our beginner entry points to the site. We had a lot of really good articles hidden all over the site before, whereas now we've been working on building really strong entry points which say to people, someone that's online going, oh, I want to learn how to knit but I don't know how to start, if they come to our new hub page for that, they can find links to all different resources and video guides. So we sort of done it in stages, but we've definitely, and we pretty much down tools on a load of other work to do that.
Yeah. So basically kind of shifted 180, really.
Yeah, which is quite a big ask of my new team, who don't actually get to see each other in person. So they've been amazing. I know
that when we touched base earlier, that you're obviously seeing the benefits from that in terms of your traffic. So could you talk us through a little bit of the impact that COVID's had on your traffic and the site?
Yeah, absolutely. So our traffic, before COVID, we were finding, we just launched, and there's this issue with Google where when you're a new brand, you get basically sandboxed until it trusts you. So we were sort of not quite seeing a rise in our traffic yet. And then since almost pretty much the month before lockdown and then ongoing, it's just started to fly. So we're up 60% month on month in terms of site users and page views. Some articles for us that did okay last year are just completely flying this year.
obviously the Great British Sewing Bee is on television at the same time as COVID. So we've seen a lot of interest in those articles. We actually saw a lot of interest in Easter crafts because I think people still wanted a bit of normality during lockdown. And yeah, given that the audience has increased so much, we're really happy that the bounce rate has actually reduced slightly since January as well. So it's obviously they are also an engaged audience.
Awesome. And on the sewing bee, so I know that there have been some really big trends in the craft industry, and I know that that has definitely been one of them. So could you possibly talk us through some successes that you've had and some trends that you've seen, and how you've kind of shifted strategy in line with those?
Yeah, so a couple of big trends that we've really responded to is we've obviously with the schools being off, everyone is looking for ways to entertain their children. So we didn't have any kids craft content before. So we have, as well as launched a big listicle of different kids craft ideas, we've got more in the making, and that's doing really well for us. And we've actually got some videos that we filmed that will be going out as well to show people how to make a rainbow sun catcher for their window, friendship bracelets for teenagers. So kids crafts is doing really well, and it's a huge trend. I've put on this slide, but everyone wants to make a face mask, shock horror, but we held off for ages publishing a face mask because of the conflicting public health advice about them. But then we realized that that's what the audience was looking for and making, even if we weren't giving it to them. So we published a face mask, and it's rapidly become one of our best performing, as in how to make a face mask, I should add. And it's done really well, and it's also attracting a new audience. So what's interesting about that post is the traffic to it is actually coming from Flipboard and news referral websites, and a lot of our craft at home, we have a whole new craft at home section with specific content for people like store cupboard makes and things like that, and recycled crafts. A lot of that's doing really well on Trello, because and that's really exciting for us, because that's not a returning audience, it's a whole new audience. And Rainbow Crafts doing really well. Yeah, that's some of the biggest successes.
Awesome. It sounds like you guys have been super busy.
It's been an interesting time with young children at home.
Well, and you've seen the successes as well. I know that the site traffic's been amazing for you. So with that, would you possibly be able to give us just some very top line recommendations for anyone who's looking at shifting their strategies in this period?
Yeah, I think it's really important with online it's really important to have a direction of travel where you want to be in the next 3 months, 6 months, a year with your website. But equally, this is such an unprecedented situation that if you can, it's well worth just trying out some stuff and seeing what works and thinking about what your audience are looking for. Oh, I put at the top of here, actually, supporting your team is key, because obviously we're all humans and we're all suddenly locked in our homes. And I think making sure that you're looking after your team's mental well-being and that they're comfortable in the work you're giving them is really important to how successful that work is. And I know, for example, if one of my teams had a bad day, at times I've said to them, well, here's sort of, but they wanted to work, I've given them like a really important job, like fixing some SEO stuff, but that they could just hammer through that for the day. And then other days they'll fly with the more creative work. So if you can adapt your content around with the people you have, that really helps.
Yeah.
Prioritize, because online it's endless what you can do. And everyone, in the first week after lockdown, my inbox, I couldn't even keep on top of people asking to put things on the website. So we really heavily prioritized. We even put an out of office on saying, we're just not going to get back to you quickly. We will get back to you, but the situation is unusual. And that enabled us to just drop everything and really focus hard on those key search terms. Our team ability to follow Google Trends has improved so much through this period because we've done that, and we didn't have a clear head to do that before because we were just sort of reacting to what everyone else wanted us to do. And your digital planning process. So if you haven't used Trello yet, we're big fans of the Trello. And basically whatever you can do to try, and you can't replicate all sitting together in an office or in your workplace, but there are some really good tools and they can help you to make sense of that to-do list and to prioritize it. And lastly, I'm really keen to let my team know when they've worked on something that's done really well. I make sure that I sort of tell them, oh, that video you put up's done really well, or that article you did is now in our top 10 articles. That's amazing. And because I think it's really important for people to see the results of their work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Zoe is going to be taking part in the panel that we're running later on in today's session. So we've covered a lot. I'm sure there's a lot more to say as well. So if anyone does have any specific questions for Zoe, please do pop them in the chat and we'll try to get through as many as possible. And whatever we don't get through, we'll follow up afterwards. So thank you so much, Zoe. That was really insightful and really interesting to see what you guys are doing. And I'm so pleased for you that everything's kind of going really well. So I'm now going to hand over the reins to Callum and Lucy, who are going to run through the trends and insights that we've seen across paid marketing activity.
Cool. Thanks, Becky and Zoe. That was kind of really interesting. Hey everyone, I'm Callum. I'm the paid social manager here at Immediate Media. Before we begin, I'd just like to do a quick poll or two, just to get an idea of what paid advertising, if any, you're currently running. So yeah, you can see it on the screen there. Just kind of answer those two. Should give you like 10 more seconds. Should be all good. Cool, thanks for that. Let's have a look. So yes, you are running quite a lot. Okay, some interesting results there. And increased spend. Interesting. Cool. So kind of, yeah, good range of answers there. For those of you who may be feeling, a bit worried about what they are or aren't doing, then obviously don't worry. I assure you that you definitely aren't alone. Over the next 10 or so minutes, Lucy and I are going to be showing you what's been happening from a paid advertising point of view. So let's begin. So over the past 6 weeks, there have been some significant changes across the paid advertising landscape. Whilst a large number of advertisers have pulled paid activity during this period, there have been big increases in spend within certain sectors, including hobbies and interest, technology, computing, and education as well. Social platforms have reported increased engagement with ad campaigns. Twitter, for example, has seen a 25% increase in ad engagement. Facebook is also seeing some fantastic results, with lower rates being achieved as a direct result of increased traffic and less competition within the ad auction. The key thing to take away from this is that although there may be fewer campaigns running, those that do have activity live are reaping the rewards when it comes to results, where content is relevant to the current climate. On-site ad activity, such as native and display, have also seen significant changes over the past 6 weeks. Native advertising in particular has driven some outstanding results. Ad You Like has reported not only an increase in traffic, but also increased engagement as a result of the audiences spending more time consuming content. The TiVo has also seen a shift in consumer behaviour, with users not only engaging more on a regular basis, but specifically over the weekend, where content consumption was previously much lower. As with social trends, the increased supply of native and inventory has resulted in much lower eCPMs of native display units being traded. With organic strategies being adjusted to the new normal, the same is happening across advertising activity, with successful advertisers mapping strategies to match the needs and mentality of their consumers. There's more than 1 in 3 consumers relying on media for inspiration and connection. The paid content that we are putting out is more important than ever. This is further reinforced by Kantar's end-of-month report, with 78% of consumers agreeing brands should talk about how they could be more helpful.
Over the last 6 weeks at Immediate, we have seen huge shifts within both our advertisers' paid strategy and our users' mindset to consuming advertising within our platforms. We have had to adapt campaign messaging, KPIs, and in some cases completely rework content to ensure we are not only serving out the most relevant ad content to our users, but that we're being responsible in doing so. For example, one native campaign that was originally due to cover a live event was reworked into a brand relevant lifestyle hacks piece. There is not one live advertising campaign across our portfolio that hasn't had to consider its relevance to the climate. In the initial weeks of lockdown, there was a great level of uncertainty within the market. Many of our advertisers were considering pulling spend, and understandably, a few did. 6 weeks in, and it's fair to say that uncertainty is still present, but confidence is definitely growing. With active briefs beginning to rise and campaign numbers increasing week on week, advertisers are beginning to see the benefit of responsibly serving campaigns during this time. The key takeout from all of this for us is our ability to adapt and keep users front of mind has been crucial to the success of our advertising model.
Click-through rates are a great first indicator of how people are responding to our ads. Across paid social, we've seen link clicks rise by 140% over the past 6 weeks. With the rise in clicks, we have also seen a rise in traffic across our paid activity. Our on-site display impressions are up 36% month on month in April, and there's been a slight boost on mobile display impressions. We've also seen a rise in both paid social ad impressions and paid social video plays, the latter of which is well up over 1,000%. There have been similar trends across our native ad activity too. Content page view delivery is up 78%, which has also led to increased dwell times. A great example of this is a recent crafting campaign that delivered its KPI every 2 weeks ahead of its end date. Not only were the click-through rates up on benchmark, but the content has also received an incredible dwell time of over 5 minutes.
For us at Immediate, engagement is one of the most important factors when measuring campaign success. Across our network, we have seen huge increases in engagement rate across our paid social activity. For example, shares are up over 800% and video completion rates are up over 700%. It is clear from these stats that ad engagement has risen considerably since lockdown. We have seen some standout campaigns when it comes to engagement. One recent campaign promoting a recipe microsite achieved a cost per engagement of 80% below our average and site dwell time up 163% on benchmark. A confectionery brand's baking campaign that began just before lockdown received over 45 million video views, which was a secondary KPI to the reach-based campaign.
So, how do we recommend navigating the paid advertising landscape at this time? I think there's like 4 key things here. So the first one is decide what you want to achieve from your campaigns. Do you want to entertain or inform, drive engagements, or get clicks? When you know what you want to achieve, you'll have a much clearer view on how you're going to do it. Secondly, you need to adjust your content accordingly. So you don't want to just continue your pre-lockdown paid campaigns without taking notice of the current situation. If you're struggling, these 3 rules should help. So be relevant, be helpful, and be responsible. Third is use formats that are working. So video, for example, has over the past 6 weeks consistently seen a rise in views and engagements on paid social media. And lastly, always keep reviewing what content works best and where to ensure you're getting the best possible results. The reception to advertising that we have seen across our portfolio is a testament to the willingness of users to engage with advertisers when there's a clear user benefit. Whether you're providing escapism, entertainment, or information, your consumers have never been more open to the messaging you're serving, so ensure it is relevant, responsible, and always adds to their experience. Right, over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Callum. Some great recommendations there. Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm a paid search manager here at Immediate. I run paid search campaigns across a few different brands at Immediate, and typically throughout the year we run search ads, display ads, or shopping ads. But this current situation has really forced us to change and adapt our strategy to ensure we're both capitalising on the opportunities that have arisen, but also make sure that we're not spending money on advertising that just wouldn't work in this current climate. With most of our events businesses sadly cancelling or postponing events, our paid search activity has decreased quite considerably, so we've had to look for new ways to promote our brands. In our first webinar, just a few weeks into lockdown, we reported huge changes in consumer activity across search. Many industries like travel and events unfortunately saw a real downfall in searches and sales. According to research you can see here from Influencer Marketing Hub, luggage sales are currently down 77% year on year, and bridal wear sales have dropped 63% year on year. And then on the other hand, companies retailing packaged foods, cooking appliances, even gym equipment have seen massive growth recently. Bread machine sales are up 652% year on year, and weight training is up 307% year on year. 6 weeks on from our initial webinar, however, consumer search activity is suggesting that people across the world are getting used to a new normal, and search interest is in financial support, online learning, and new shopping expectations are consistently appearing on Google's recent insight analysis. So just out of curiosity, I'm going to do a quick poll to find out if anyone is currently running paid search ads. That can be your brand yourself, or if you're an agency, any clients running paid search ads. I'll just give you a few seconds to answer, and then we can compare the results to at the start the webinar we held 6 weeks ago. Yeah, so majority of you aren't running search ads, and that's pretty similar to our webinar 6 weeks ago. But back then, 74% said they weren't running ads. So in the first webinar in late March, we recognised that a lot of advertisers noticed worrying trends dominating the search engine results page. Overall, keyword searches fell, conversion rates dropped, and that obviously caused a lot of businesses to pull back on their marketing campaign budgets. So it makes sense that the majority of you guys are not running paid search ads currently. Back then, though, we did recognise that a lot of brands were going to be negatively affected, but we also noted that there would be ways to take advantage of the current situation and explore new methods of advertising that some may not have previously tried. So I expect that a lot of you had to change your marketing strategy when COVID-19 hit, and we also had to test out new ways of promotion here at Immediate. One successful example of this is with an immediate brand called 5 Minute Fun. They retail a range of kids' activity kits, books, and games. Understandably, kids' activity-related searches increased when schools were closed. So searches for how to keep kids busy increased by 350% month on month from February till March. Learning from this, we quickly set up some Google Shopping ads for 5 Minute Fun, which was something they didn't try before. And the shopping campaign has seen the brand's sales increase by 84% month on month from March to April. So I know this huge increase in sales could partly be attributed to COVID-19 and consumers being at home needing kids' activity books, but running shopping ads really definitely allowed the brand to reach new consumers that were interested in their products but not yet aware of the 5 Minute Fun brand. So the number of sales that they had run with shopping ads is massive compared to what they would have seen organically. Overall, we've seen that retailers globally are finding an almost 40% increase in traffic from their shopping campaigns year on year. COVID-19 has also obviously limited traditional retail and made e-commerce essential for most of us, but smaller businesses advertising online have done particularly well over April. Some of their largest competitors like Amazon have sometimes struggled to manage the influx of orders and have actually ended up pulling a lot of their ads from Google. So although many advertisers are not receiving the same results they would have had in February or even early March, most are beginning to show some improvement from the first days of the COVID-19 crisis. Specifically, starting the second week of April, paid search conversions actually rebounded to about 89% of their pre-COVID levels, which is great. It shows that although there was a sudden downfall in March, we are beginning to see things pick up. So aside from the insights we've seen on activity books and kids games, we've also seen some really interesting insights across all industries on search and commerce. So we're joined now by Vicky Bruce, who is the Director of E-commerce here at Immediate, to talk through trends and insights Vicky has seen on a commerce side. So hi Vicky, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey Alex.
Hey, just to begin, could you give us a quick overview of what work you do across e-commerce here at Immediate and maybe how it's changed since COVID began?
Yeah, sure. So we are quite a consumer-focused team, rather than an advertiser-focused. So I guess the goal of the e-commerce team at Immediate is to kind of work out what are people looking to buy, and then help guide them through that journey to purchase, like using our editorial content. And then, of course, making sure that we've got the right partnerships in place with advertisers and retailers, so we earn a revenue share on those purchases. And there's usually a really big research piece in that. So we've got an amazing audience development manager. Her name's Beth, and feels like she has a crystal ball sometimes. But she uses things like seasonal trends and search behavior to predict weeks or even like months ahead of time, what are people looking to buy, what advice might they be looking for before buying it that immediate media is kind of best place to give, and kind of influencing content plans from there. So that's normally a big piece of work that we do, say on a quarterly basis. I think it's probably fair to say that since COVID-19 struck, a lot of those plans have gone out the window. I really like Zoe's reference to having the plans on the board and the board's in the office and we're here. Luckily we're all at home. Luckily we use Trello as well. We're huge fans, but yeah, everything has really been turned on its head. So yeah, the plans you made at the start of the year, they're not the right things anymore. The things people are buying very different. The way they're buying it is really different. So we've noticed that there are much shorter purchase journeys. People are a lot more quick to buy once they found something they like the look of. They're trying to snap things up very quickly. And we've been seeing new trends. I think it's fair to say almost every day. Every morning we'll come into the office and we'll see that there's something new that people are looking for, that they need advice on. Yeah. We've had to be really reactive to keep on top of that over the last couple of months. But it's been worth it, I think, to kind of go with the data that you just pulled out in a couple of slides ago. The number of transactions we've seen have shot through the roof since this has happened, but it's hard work to stay on top of it, but really worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And those trends that you saw at the beginning, have any continued throughout the lockdown, or are you guys seeing any new industries that are beginning to pique new interest?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting actually. So before lockdown, I think there was kind of a couple of weeks where it was before Boris Johnson told us all to stay at home, but there was a kind of a week or so where, the vibes around coronavirus had really changed and people were definitely feeling a little bit nervous about it. And in those 2 weeks, everything was very focused on what to stock up in an emergency. People were asking about things you might expect, like which brands of hand sanitizer should I buy, which thermometers are the best. So we saw a lot of that, and those have continued to do quite well. But once lockdown was announced, and I think perhaps about a week after, that changed to a lot more kind of practical daily items. So on good food, for example, I think we saw huge spikes in subscriptions for delivery boxes and bread machines. I mean, everyone's making bread at the moment. For Gardener's World, it was really funny. I think we saw like a 5,000% increase in demand for compost delivery almost overnight. And obviously, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are kind of sat there trying to figure out, like, what do I do with my time? Kids' educational activities as well was massive. That coincided really well with the schools shutting down, funnily enough, and how to keep your kids busy. And then actually in the last few weeks, volumes have grown in, I think, more leisurely items, I think it's fair to say. So things that we've seen people looking for and purchasing for the last 2 and 3 weeks in particular are things like outdoor play sets for kids, baking ideas. There's a lot of stuff in like beginners cycling and fitness areas. As Zoe said, crafting's been doing really, really well. And I think it's just that we can see now that people are starting to accept that, this might go on for a while, and they're now investing in things to make sure that they can, make the most out of life under lockdown rather than just surviving it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we all kind of personally felt that initial panic, and now we're getting used to it. So it's interesting to see that it directly translates in search as well. With all this new search data that you're seeing, how does it influence how IM brands react? You said you have to be really reactive. How do you think brands need to adapt to take advantage of the current search situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the immediate media brands are all, and I think this is really clearly illustrated by Zoe talking through how her plans had changed earlier, that the immediate media brands are all very, very savvy and data-led, and that's been a real benefit to all of them, really. So the new search data that we've been uncovering within the commerce team, and that has been uncovered from the kind of central audience development team, has been a huge factor in like the revised content plans across the business, both from like a commerce perspective and just in general. And I think it's worth pointing out that so all of our brands sit in sectors that are like really relevant to people during COVID-19. So you've got like food, parenting, gardening, crafts, entertainment, cycling, fitness. So those are all areas that are, you know, people are really looking to now. They're all kind of stuck at home. So yeah, we've been checking those trends every day with the brands, and they've been adjusting the plans if they need to. And it has calmed down a lot now, but definitely in the first few weeks, you know, we just had to pivot to being completely reactive, away from that kind of big 3-month plan that we would do in advance. And as the questions that people were asking and the products that people wanted to buy were changing every day, you know, we had to change our content plans with it. But I think everyone did a really good job, and it's been worth it.
Great. Yeah, so obviously you said a lot of searches are shifting towards outdoor leisurely activities now. And with a lot of online retailers facing huge demand, we've seen the keyword in stock emerge on search. Do you think this will impact those online retailers who aren't used to this level of demand? Like, would it affect them negatively, affect customer loyalty and experience, for example? Or do you think it's a good thing, how in demand they are right now?
Yeah, so I have been doing a lot of work on this over the last kind of few weeks, last month or so, and it's a complicated question. So bear in mind, so retailers have been hit from 2 fronts at the moment. They're in a really difficult position. So they've got the increased demand from everybody who's looking to buy online and kind of wants these things because they're stuck at home and they want them now. And that's hard to deal with when you're not prepared for it. We've seen some retailers say that, you know, a week in lockdown, they've seen as many transactions as they'd seen in Black Friday. And if you're not prepared for that demand, that can really take you by surprise. But as well as that, you've got the double whammy. If there's limited ability to supply these things, especially if you're not completely geared up to be able to distribute online, social distancing measures for staff and you know, weaknesses in the supply chain, they're going to mean that not only have you got an increased demand, but you've also got a slightly lower ability to fulfill. That's really hard to deal with. And you've got retailers on different ends of the scale. So you've got someone like Primark on one end who they've been making the most of it with some really nice kind of branding campaigns, but they were never geared up for e-commerce, and so their revenues have dropped down to zero. Whereas I guess on the other side of it, you might have Amazon, who were always geared up to be able to quickly scale up and down and deal with online demand and distribute things very quickly. And retailers like that will be doing very, very well. So if you can manage to keep on top of your supply chain and keep up with demand, you'll be doing excellently. But I think you're right, it's difficult for retailers that can't quite meet it. In terms of how they handle that, I mean, we've seen some nice examples. Like Lakeland's a really good example, where they've mentioned on their site, like, we are stopping orders after a certain number because we can't deal with demand. And what's really key there is that retailers just need to be really honest with their customers and manage expectations really, really clearly. If you're going to have delayed deliveries, or if you're going to have waiting times in your website, that's fine, you do what you have to do, but just make sure you're clear with people, so they don't get frustrated, because when people get frustrated, that's what really damages brand loyalty. But even with that, I think it's worth bearing in mind, I still think there is a risk for smaller retailers or retailers that are struggling with demand, that they've got loyal shoppers that would usually only buy certain items through them. Now, if they're struggling to meet the demand for those items, that might then push those loyal shoppers onto bigger e-commerce sites like Amazon, even if those people, you know, weren't previously Amazon customers. And once that happens, Amazon and you know, those big guys, they're very good at keeping customers. They're very good at retention, and it might be hard for those smaller retailers to get them back. And I think that's something to be aware of. But yeah, I mean, for the long term, I think retailers are probably going to come out of this crisis and take a good hard look at how their e-com operation is set up and how easily things like distribution and deliveries can be scaled in the future. But for the time being, I think everyone's doing the right thing, which is, you know, just focusing on the problem in hand, keeping the business afloat, keeping their staff safe, and keeping their customers really well informed. And I think as long as you're doing that right now, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. I think definitely agree with the point on being honest, just being honest as small business. And then I think too, this is probably definitely the time for companies like Primark with no online presence to maybe evaluate going online. But thanks very much, Vicky. Thanks so much for your information. I'm going to just pass it over to Becky for a Q&A session with Rob Marshall from Commute.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Vicky. That was really, really interesting. So obviously we've spoken quite a lot about the general industry and given quite a lot of examples from immediate. So we're really lucky today to be joined by the lovely Rob Marshall from Commute. And he's just going to talk to us about how Commute have adapted to the situation. So welcome, Rob.
For those on the webinar who aren't familiar, could you give us a quick intro to Commute, who you are, what you're known for, who your core audience is?
Yeah, so Commute, well, technically Commute is a route planning, navigation and community platform for outdoor activities. So it's available both on Android and Android or iOS and on the web. So but I guess for us, it's definitely much more than that. We're now the largest outdoor platform in Europe. And the mission for Commute is to enable great outdoor adventures. So what we really want to do is remove any hurdles for people who want to get out cycling, hiking, running, and all different types of cycling as well, both mountain biking and road and whatnot. So maybe some sort of background on Commute. It was launched around 10 years ago by 6 friends. So four of them grew up on the Austrian-German border sort of together, and they were big outdoor enthusiasts and tech enthusiasts, and they thought they could sort of launch this great product to encourage people to get out. Core audience, so it's definitely outdoor enthusiasts and cyclists. Then also in the sort of German market where it initially launched, active masses as well. So lots of like the leisure community kind of take up Commute.
Cool. So I guess in the current kind of lockdown situation that we're in, it's very prevalent kind of tool. So what kind of strategy shifts have you guys had to make in response to this?
So I guess initially what we tried to do, and we will still continue to try to do, is to remain relatively patient but agile at the same time, if that makes sense. I think it's the structure of Commute means that we've been able to do this, which has been fantastic. There's been, I guess the 3 sort of tiers to the marketing side of things is our brand, our community, and then our sort of the media side of it. The community probably was impacted the most. So our community managers look after all the events, ambassadors, influencers, the kind of, I guess, the experiential side of marketing. And they had a full year planned of workshop and events and sponsorship of sort of cycling sportifs and all different bits and pieces like that. And obviously the work with their ambassadors. Our ambassadors are sort of super keen explorers and spend a lot of their time sort of traveling the world and doing different things. So yeah, we had to really kind of look at what we were doing there and see how we could still engage with the community. And a big part of that was launching the Commute Campfire webinars. So these are like route planning workshops, but also Q&As with our ambassadors, so they can give some insight into the sort of the different bits and pieces they've been up to. Lots of, I guess, sort of the brand side of things, which is like our user communications. Lots of this is very inspirational already. We did slightly tailor our message because we were kind of, a big part of it is sort of the whole world, but what we wanted to do is look at ways that we could inspire people. So with like kind of around a lifetime of adventure. And then, yeah, maybe from like the media side, like a key part of the sort of the messaging was to try and keep everything valid, even if we weren't in like a lockdown situation. And then again, very inspirational, local, so really specific to the sort of the different regions. So encouraging people to kind of maybe, yeah, get out on adventures locally. And then there was we did slightly pause our activity in kind of our new markets where the restrictions were sort of heavier.
So have you seen like kind of a mass uptake of the app? Like, have there been any surprising results or trends that you've seen from your audience during this time?
Well, yeah, it's been great to see so many signups. We've actually just gone over the 10 million registered users. So there's been sort of really strong growth, especially in the mature and developing markets. Like I said, there's been further restrictions in like the new markets, which for us would be France, Italy, and Spain. So there's been a bit of a delay there. But yeah, it's been really great to see the sort of everyone getting out and about and cycling and whatnot in the sort of new markets. Another kind of interesting thing, I guess, is it's been a really great time for us to build relationships with lots of the specialist media as well. This is something we've put quite a lot of work into over the last year, and it feels like it's really sort of come to fruition a little bit over this period where people are looking for content and new and exciting things to talk about.
Yeah, that's great. So I know that you guys are a remote company normally. So when lockdown was kind of announced, in that sense, nothing really changed for you guys in terms of like day-to-day working. And I imagine that you were kind of way ahead of everyone else, like us, who, you know, were in an office. So how did that kind of affect things for you? Like as you said, Komoot is a remote company. We've got sort of 65 staff across 12 countries, spread out sort of through Europe. So I guess we really hit the ground running. We could continue working at the same pace that we had before. There sort of has been a few different bits put in place. Like I said, lots of our community managers are out and about working in sort of the community, so they've had to really tailor their approach. And also we are quite still a social company, and lots of our employees spend time sort of working in co-working spaces and stuff like that. So we have introduced sort of daily activities and calls ranging from weird and wonderful things like meditation, CrossFit, to sort of happy hour drinks and pet show and tells. So we've had to adapt, but it's been fantastic that we were already in such a sort of cool situation going into it. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, I will wrap this up, and I know George is going to run a panel later on, so any questions that anyone's had, we'll shoot those over to Rob later. Thank you so much for your time, Rob. Really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing you again in the panel later.
Brill, thank you.
Thank you both so much. That was fantastic. So, as Becky mentioned, at this point we were supposed to be running a panel, and unfortunately we've run out of time today. However, we are going to still record the panel offline, and we will make this available through our YouTube channel that we will share in our follow-up email. So sorry we've run out of time today for the panel. So I just want to wrap up. We're completely aware that we've run through a huge amount of information in the past hour, and whilst we'll be following up with the sort of on-demand version of the webinar, the deck and the results in the poll, I just wanted to highlight how we can help you during this time. Firstly, I'd like to highlight that we're here to help. We understand that times are tough. Making decisions about marketing activity is tricky, and immediate media is full of incredibly talented individuals, and now more than ever we'd like to encourage you to get in touch with us and speak to us so that we can use our knowledge and insight to help you thrive during this time. The best email address is to find us on im360@immediate.co.uk, and myself or one of the team will get back to you as soon as possible. Secondly, after taking you through the insights and growth that we're seeing across our different platforms, it's clear that right now we have an extremely engaged audience. Coupled that with our editorial expertise, we're truly a powerhouse of branded content, so please do reach out to one of your sales teams if you're interested in working together, or alternatively get in contact with us and we'll put you in touch with the right team. So that's it from us. We want to say a massive thank you for joining us today. Sorry we ran out of time for the panel, but we will film this and make sure that it's available for all of you in the coming weeks. We'll be in touch, and in the meantime, stay healthy, stay safe, and we hope to speak to you again soon. Thanks ever so much.